You know, I don't celebrate much, but every now and then I will. And when Dudley was appointed GIPSA administrator, I had a scotch and water. No, I had a scotch. Dump the water. This was a big deal. Dudley was a big deal. And so Dudley's first on the list this morning, and Dudley, would you kindly tell us what you have to, what information you can bestow upon us? And let's talk about the setbacks, and then let's have some fun this afternoon talking about some of the solutions. So, thanks.
Well, I know it's time to get to work, so if y'all don't mind, I'm gonna take my coat off. You know, Mark Twain once stated, "I have a higher standard than George Washington. He could not lie. I can, but I won't." And I was taught as a child that, you know, if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said. And so that's what I'm here for. That's what I've always been here for, and that's something that I try to live by. I knew when I went to D.C. to fight for the independent family farm that it was going to be a battle royal. But I was ready to try to help level the playing field. I was actually ready to be the man on point. However, I didn't really realize how many people on the Hill were in the pocket of big agribusiness. I didn't really realize once I got there, excuse me, how many people outside of GIPSA, but within USDA, were more loyal to the Hill than they were to this administration. You know, I ask the question now, why wasn't GIPSA allowed to defend the rule? Why did they take me out of the game when we got close to the goal line? I was surprised that Republicans like Kingston from Georgia, Conaway from Texas, Roberts from Kansas, Johans from Nebraska would sell out their constituents. I was surprised that House Democrats like Costa from California and Scott from Georgia were doing the same thing. And it was very disheartening when the people we were counting on, our friends, Republicans and Democrats, when they turned out to be such invertebrates. You know, the silence was deafening. Mark Twain also said, "Courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, not absence of fear." Every hero that's ever been in this country, when you talk to them, will tell you that they were scared. But as Mike just said, the lady expounded on, they did the right thing. Well, I ask now, where are the men of courage? Where are the statesmen? You know, I've told this story as I've given speeches across the country. What I thought about when I saw the rider the first time. And I said, I thought about something that my dad told me. My dad was a pipe fitter and a construction worker, and he was pretty colorful. So I had to rearrange it a little bit. But basically the context of it was, son, there are not many forms of human life lower than a politician, or many callings higher than a statesman. That's who we need to be looking for. If there are any left, and stateswomen, as the case might be. I don't think there were any women in Congress or in the Senate when my dad told me that at a young age. Politicians are moved by two things: money and voting power. We don't have the most money, but we have the votes. We must be aggressive. We must call on the statesmen and stateswomen, but we must call out the politicians. Now, as we continue our battle, I want you to heed to the words of what President Lincoln says. And being a Southern boy, I don't bring up President Lincoln as much as I probably should. But this is what he said: "Let no feeling of discouragement prey upon you. In the end, you are sure to succeed." Be assured, we accomplished a lot. We have accomplished a lot. Did we get it all? No. Did we get some things that some people said in the past would never happen? Yes. But we've got to continue to fight. There's a lot more work to do. The first thing we've got to do is educate the public. If you don't believe the public can get something done, why don't you go ask the people at BPI? Ask them if you don't think social media can make a change. And for those who don't know who BPI is, they're the ones that came up with the finely textured lean beef, or pink slime as some people talk about. I'm not saying it's bad or good. My point is, you know what? Social media made a drastic change in what was happening in the marketplace. And the point is, they can make that same change to help the family farmer. There's a question out there the public needs to know about. Are we going to have independent farmers? Are we going back to the turn of the century and have sharecroppers? That's what poultry growers are. No question about it. They just get to owe $1 million. And once they get in the business, then it's, you do what we tell you to do, or you lose your farm. That's a point blank what it is. And if you don't think it can happen in the cattle business, think again. Wise up. Vertical integration zeroes in where animals are concentrated. In the chickens or in poultry, it's a chicken house. In cattle, it's a feedlot. There'll be some people here today that'll show you what's happened to independent feedlots. I think in the last 20, 25 years, we've lost like 35,000, I think, small feedlots to medium-sized feedlots. But going back to what I'm trying to say with the public, do you actually believe that the normal person on the street wants their food coming from multinational corporations? I don't think so. If that was the case, there wouldn't be anybody at a farmer's market. I just got back from Ottawa, Canada, visiting some kinfolks of mine up there, my wife and I. And we stayed at a hotel, we stayed at a hotel by Boward Market, which is a big market, right down from the Parliament, where people every day, they come and buy cheese, they come and buy bread, they come and buy blueberries, everything you can imagine. Every day, you see it crowded down there. You see the same thing in other farmers markets across this country. We must build coalitions. There's no question about it. There's only 1% of us, literally 1% of the people on the farm, less than 1% who make their predominant living on the farm. Well, that's 99% who don't. And some of these people, and rightfully so, they don't know a soybean from a jelly bean. They go to the store. Some people think their food comes from the store, made in the store. It's not like 50 years ago. It's not like 100 years ago. We have moved away from an agrarian economy, far away from it. So we must build these coalitions, and we've got to reach out to people that we traditionally haven't reached out to. We've got to reach out to unions. We've got to reach out to consumer groups. We've got to reach out to environmental groups. And you know what? We got to reach out to animal welfare groups. Now notice what I say. I didn't say, Mr. Detmer, make sure you get this right now. I didn't say animal rights groups. I said animal welfare groups. And I believe if you'll check in the good book, it says that we are to care for our animals. Remember, the enemy of your enemy is your ally. We have to have a common theme. We must empower producers. How do we do that? We must minimize captive supply and reinvent competitive markets. When I was at GIPSA, we sent a work plan over to do that. As far as I know, it's still sitting across the street. We must address and modernize bonding requirements to ensure that farmers and ranchers are protected. We initiated a work plan at GIPSA, sent it across the street. It's still sitting there. We must revamp Farm Service Agency and Small Business Administration guaranteed loan programs for contract growers. I have worked on that. As far as I know, it's still dormant. Let me tell you why we need that. First of all, common sense. Do you think that we as taxpayers should guarantee $1 million loan for someone that's got a contract to grow chickens for 6 weeks? Does that make sense to anybody in this crowd? If they do, stand up, hold your hand up. A year. Let's just say a year. Does that make sense? There's people in here that owe $1 million, I'm sure, on farms, or have owed $1 million on farms. Could you pay that back in a year? What about 3 years? Well, that's what FDA did. You can't pay the interest. You can't even start touching the principal in 3 years. That's our taxpayer dollars that are out there. Now, what does that make a difference to you? Because you're talking about contract growers. Because it keeps the stranglehold of big business on contract growers. Okay? Who is your competitor? Poultry, right? We sell beef. You know, since I've got home, I've got my cow herd put back together. We sell beef. Okay. If they can strangle that farmer and keep them in an inequitable position, that puts us as producers in an inequitable position. Because remember, these companies, most of them, the big three as I call them, they're not beef companies, they're protein companies. They have hogs, they have poultry, they have beef. As we've talked a little bit about here, we must seize control of the checkoff. Let there be no doubt. The leaders, let's get this straight, the leaders at NCBA are our enemies, not the grassroots membership. The leaders at NCBA have sold out to the packers. They're leading their members to the slaughterhouse of vertical integration. And last but not least, we must finalize all of the portions that were in the GIPSA rule that have not been finalized. And I'm going to show you a slide here in just a minute. Middle button, please. I'm going to go through a little presentation here briefly. But I want while you're reading this, I want you to think about this. Anyone in Congress that supports the House rider, this is the original rider, supports bad faith, retaliation, denial of due process, and fraud. I want to repeat that. Anyone in Congress that supports this rider supports bad faith, retaliation, denial of due process, and fraud. And I'm fixing to show you why. Why do you think they won't have a roll call vote in some of these committees? Why do you think they have a voice vote? Because they're invertebrates. They're cowards. Stand up, do something, take a position. I don't care. I deal in a business every day that I deal with adversarial people. They're on one side, I'm on the other. Stand up. Don't hide under the table when you're trying to say something to a judge. Stand up, take your position. They don't do that. This is the first rider. Now it's going to expire, if it's not renewed, on September 30th, end of the fiscal year. This is a new rider. Now what it does, those numbers at the top, they're just definitions. Definitions. And 215A, it deals with giving a farmer 90 days notice before you take his birds away. 90 days. Now this is someone that owes hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're trying to say they don't even want that. That's in the rule that was passed. So you don't deserve any notice. Cut your income off, period, when they're talking to growers. Just tightening the stranglehold as I talked about. When you get down, they want the Secretary of Agriculture to rescind the sections that is passed. Now this is in an appropriations bill. And I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I try to use a little common sense because I don't claim to be the smartest guy in the world. But doesn't that sound like that kind of infringes on the executive power? That you're going to have some nitwit from Congress put a rider in an appropriation bill and try to force the President of the United States, no matter who it is, no matter what party he comes from, and say that you can't spend the money to do this, and you are going to take this executive action. That just doesn't make sense to this country boy. Now, these are the portions of the Packers and Stockyards Act that every administration since its inception have said deals with some actions that are not antitrust actions. They're remedial actions. There might be something filed under this section that could be antitrust. But if you look at this section, it says any particular person. That's one. One. Any particular person is one person. So how can somebody interpret this rule to say that you have to prove competitive injury? And competitive injury, let me give you an example. Competitive injury is like if I move in your subdivision, if you're living in town and I move in your subdivision and I just, say, you know what, I don't like you, so I'm going to burn your house down. So I just go over while you're gone to work and I set your house on fire and burn it to the ground. Now, under this rule, you would have to say, you would sue me for burning your house down, but you would have to show that the burning of your house affected the price of every house in the region. How can any particular person common sense to say that that's what that said. This was part of the proposed route. This was one of the portions that the rider put a hold on. And this is what I was talking about before. There's an old saying from hill folks in the South. And is Bill Bullard here? Yeah, Bill used, when I was up in North Dakota, Bill would interpret for me. Because we had a little language difference. But there's an old saying from the hill folks in the South that said, you're either for me or you're against me. Now, Bill, what's that mean? It's either for me or against me. You're either for me or against me. Okay. Well, that's the way I look at things. That's the way George Bush looked at things. Yeah, I think he said that. You're either on my side or you're either not on my side. Now, when I go back to say anybody that supported this, supported the rider, supports bad faith. What's that first section say? It's an unfair practice to be unscrupulous, deceptive, and act in bad faith. Anybody think that's a bad thing to do away with some, to have a rule say you can't do that? Okay. Then you can be unscrupulous, you can be deceitful, and you can act in bad faith. If you're against this, then you want to promote being unscrupulous, deceitful, and acting in bad faith. Let's go to the next one. Retaliatory action. Do you think a big corporation, whether it be agribusiness or any other corporation, should be able to retaliate against a farmer? I don't. The people that support the rider do. They think the company should be able to do whatever they want to, including retaliation. How about denial of due process? This was an unfair practice. We wanted to show that was an unfair practice, to deny you a right to trial by jury. So I guess if you're for the rider, you're against the trial by jury, or you're against having rights. Let me tell you one thing. We always talk about what we didn't get done. We got something done that is very, very important, and that's the arbitration provisions in the road. Of course, it got passed in the 2008 Farm Bill to set up writing this road. That deals with arbitration. That gives you the right to choose whether you want arbitration or not. That's very important. Because in some of these contracts, you gave up. They wrote the contract, said you give up your right to trial by jury. And then in the arbitration clause, it costs $30,000 to get to a hearing. Just to get to a hearing. To me, that's important. Just to give you that right. Even if you never want to file a lawsuit as long as you're alive. That's a deterrent to the other side. It makes them treat you fairly. Look at this other. Terminating a poultry growing arrangement, a swine contract, with no other reason than they allege you broke the law. No trial, no hearing, no administrative hearing, no nothing. Hey, we think you did, so you're out of here. We're canceling your contract. And fraud, the last one. Fraud. The people that, the congressmen and senators that voted for this rider, in the past, I'm not talking about the rider right now, that only came out of the House, hadn't been to the Senate. But this went to the Senate conference. They had conference people. When a conference committee gets together, you have a bill from one side and a bill from another side, Senate bill, House bill, they're not the same, you go to conference. They voted the conference report and left that rider in there. Well, they must have thought that defrauding producers was a good thing. Why would they leave it in? Why would anybody support that? Other than they're in the pocket of big apple business. I had a friend of mine that's a poultry grower in Virginia. He did a little research, and I think I'm quoting him correctly. When they sent a letter around that was signed by 147 members of Congress to say that GIPSA didn't do the cost-benefit analysis properly. Not the final cost-benefit analysis, the proposed root cost-benefit analysis. Those 147 members of Congress had received over $48 million in donations from big companies. 48 million. They stopped this provision. And this is one of those, they want the secretary to, it's not even in the final rule, but they want him to never think about it again, I guess. This says that there are some occasions under the Packs and Stockyards Act that you don't have to prove competitive interest. Just like when I talked about in section B, which deals with competitive injury and other things. Deals with undue preference, excuse me. So we have to look at these things and see where we're going. You know, we've done a little talking here, and I've talked about we got to get back up on our feet. We've been knocked down, we haven't been knocked out. And it's tough. It's tough getting things done. You know, I've been in cases where I lost cases. I had an old lawyer tell me I hadn't been out of law school a year and said, son, you hadn't practiced laws until you lost a case you didn't think you could lose, and you won one you didn't think you could win. And I've been doing this 37 years, and it's tough when you fight for somebody and you know they've been wrong, but you come out on the short end. I know what it feels like. But I want to tell you something. Perseverance is the key. Dogged determination is the answer. H. Jackson Brown probably put it best. He said, in the confrontation between the stream and the rock, the stream always wins. Not by strength, but by perseverance. Let me close with this thought. The brave men and women who serve our country, they're not fighting for corporations. Corporations are not people. They don't have a heart to break, a soul to save, or a life to lose. The United States is a country of the people, and it was built by the people, with their hands, for the people. And I believe the people must prevail. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.